right, let's unpack this one. Imagine Superman, right? The Man of Steel. And he's taking on this burden of a mythological titan, not just any burden, but like the literal heavens. But here's the twist. Was it actually, real? A real feat? Or just a powerful idea, a metaphor?
Yeah, that's the heart of it. Today, our deep dive revolves around a very specific, highly debated moment from Superman. Man of Tomorrow issue, #12. We're talking about Superman lifting the heavens. Our sources are mainly the comic itself, obviously, but also some of the commentary around it that really stirred things up.
Right. And our mission today really is to cut through some of that noise. We want to look closely at the evidence in the comic and figure out what this moment truly means. Not just for Superman, but maybe for how we interpret stories in general, especially ones that mix, the real and the symbolic. Because there are some really conflicting views out there, and, well, we're going on a bit of a journey to get a clearer picture of how creators can tell these multi-layered stories. So the core controversy, the heart of this whole thing, is Superman's heaven's feet. Some readers look at it and say, okay, this is purely symbolic. It represents his moral weight, his role, whatever. While others are absolutely convinced it was a literal act of, cosmic strength within the DC universe.
And a lot of that confusion, it seems to stem from a statement by the writer Robert Venditti. Someone asked him if Superman was listing a literal thing, and Venditti said it was, quote, a metaphysical weight. And that it all meant to be a metaphor for how Superman is the foundation of the DC universe. Which, sounds pretty clear on the surface.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because it makes you ask, right? Can something be genuinely real in a story, like physically happen, and also be deeply metaphorical at the same time? And if it can, how do writers and artists actually pull that off?
That's exactly the crux of it. I mean, a metaphor basically is just when something concrete, something you can picture, stands for an abstract idea. Like when we say someone carries the weight of the world, we know they aren't holding the planet, right? It means they've got huge responsibilities. But, and this is crucial in good storytelling, visual or written, metaphors don't always just replace literal actions. Often they sort of coexist or build on them. A physical act can absolutely carry huge symbolic meaning without stopping being physical. That's often how the most powerful stories work, actually.
Right. It's that layering of meaning that makes a story resonate. And this comic, Man of Tomorrow, it really seems to play with that, using both levels. Okay, so let's actually picture the scene from the comic. Superman finds Atlas, and Atlas is clearly, struggling under this massive burden. And Superman, being Superman, offers to take it off his hands, specifically the heavens, drawn as this huge celestial structure, just so Atlas can go to his daughter's wedding.
And Atlas accepts. Now, as Superman takes on this immense load, the comic does something fascinating visually. It cuts away to scenes around Metropolis. You see other people stepping up, doing heroic things while Superman's occupied, like a kid saving a cat, Supergirl protecting the city, even Black Canary saving someone and saying anything for Superman's town. It reinforces his impact, his inspiration. But here's the really clever bit visually. These heroic actions, they aren't just shown in separate panels. They're drawn directly onto the structure Superman is holding. They literally become part of the heavens on his shoulders. So it visually fuses the literal act holding this structure with the symbolic idea of his influence. The physical contains the metaphorical.
Wow, okay. And then Atlas comes back, takes the burden back, and he has this moment with Superman, right? He says something like, perhaps only you understand as I do. Those who are charged with the weight of the world would never wish it on another. Though it's good to know others will help when needed. It's like this shared understanding between them.
Exactly. And then the closing image for this whole sequence is really telling. After Atlas takes the heavens back, Superman just collapses. He says, I'm going to rest here a while. It just hammers home the physical toll, the sheer exhaustion, grounds it completely.
Okay, so to really get this feat, we need to look at Atlas too, right? The guy Superman is subbing in for. What's his deal in the comic?
Precisely. You have to look at who he's replacing. And Atlas, well, both in Greek myth and consistently in DC Comics, he's a physical being. His task is literally holding up the heavens. He's not a symbol, not a dream figure. His punishment is physical, eternal endurance and depictions. They always show him straining, groaning, sweating. DC really runs with that established idea. Think about the conversation when Superman first arrives. He asks Atlas, how heavy is it? Neck front. And Atlas says, the most you can bear, plus more. Now that implies, well, it suggests a physical weight that's scalable, quantifiable, something that tests even the strongest, not just an emotional feeling.
What about that line, though, where Atlas tells Superman to take the weight not with your hands, but with your heart? People point to that as proof it's symbolic. But couldn't that just be, poetic language about the mindset needed for a real hardship?
I think that's exactly it. Atlas isn't saying it's not physical. He's talking about the mental grit, the fortitude required to keep enduring something incredibly physically taxing. It's like lifting a heavy weight is one thing, but holding it indefinitely. That takes something more. Plus, look at Atlas before the handoff. The art shows him physically straining. Tense muscles, grounded stance, face drenched in sweat. These are all universal signs of physical effort. It's clearly presented as a tangible burden.
Okay, so Atlas has this literal crushing weight. Then comes the transfer to Superman. Atlas even warns him, right? He says, brace yourself. Holding up the heavens ain't a trifle. That sounds like a warning about a serious physical task.
Absolutely. And then the art immediately shows Superman's reaction. It's intense. He gasps, his body tenses right up, knees buckle, arms lock. You see sweat instantly appear. His face shows visible struggle. These aren't symbolic gestures. They're textbook signs of someone taking on immense physical stress. And importantly, he stays rooted there. He's not shown floating in some dreamscape or just thinking hard. He's holding something.
And then Atlas returns and he says something really crucial, doesn't he? About sacrifice. Something like, keep everything from crashing down means sacrificing much. If not for you, I'd have sacrificed a day no father should miss.
Yes. And that line is huge. Keep everything from crashing down. That confirms the heavens are a real structure with, real consequences if dropped. It implies catastrophic physical collapse. It wasn't just about emotional support for Atlas. It was about literally preventing devastation by holding the structure up. So the physical act is what gives the metaphor its power. By literally holding the heavens, Superman embodies his role as a foundation, not just figuratively, but through actual depicted sacrifice and strength in this moment. The weight on his shoulders is the responsibility made tangible.
It really seems like the deeper meaning only works because the act was presented as real in the story.
Precisely. The metaphor is built on top of the literal feat.
So it makes you wonder, if the creators only wanted a metaphor, why depict it this way? Why not use clearer, purely symbolic methods?
That's a really important question for understanding how stories communicate. I mean, if they wanted purely metaphorical, there are standard comic book tools for that. Like, they could have easily framed it as a dream sequence. Wavy panels, Superman looking introspective. But nope, it's grounded in the story's real time. No cues suggesting imagination. Or they could have used narration, like Superman's internal monologue saying, "Sometimes it feels like I'm holding up the world." That immediately signals symbolism. But the comic doesn't do that. The dialogue is direct. The actions are presented as happening. And even those symbolic images of other heroes, they're drawn onto the physical structure he's holding. They're integrated with the physical, not floating separately as abstract ideas.
So the choice not to use those standard symbolic techniques feels deliberate, like they wanted the physical reality of it.
It strongly suggests the intention was for the physical weight to be real within the context of the story. The method reinforces the message.
Okay, let's circle back then to Robert Venditti's comment, the metaphysical weight thing. How should we, as readers or analysts, treat that kind of post-publication statement from a writer?
Well, this gets into the fascinating, sometimes tricky idea of canon in comics, right? Canon, generally speaking, is defined by what actually happens in the published work on the page. It's not usually defined by interviews given later or tweets or, casual comments. Think of it like this. If a writer says in an interview, "Oh, Batman can definitely dodge bullets point blank," but the comics consistently show him getting hit or needing armor. Well, the comic, the published story, is what defines Batman's abilities in that canon. What's shown takes precedence over what's said externally. Or if a writer says Flash can't run to the end of time, but then a comic depicts him doing exactly that, the comic event becomes a canon fact.
Okay, I see. So why should you, listening to this, care about this distinction beyond just, settling a comic book argument?
Well, I think it matters because relying too heavily on external author commentary to interpret or even override the published work, it can kind of undermine canon itself. Canon provides consistency, a stable framework for these fictional universes. If what's on the page can just be waved away by a later comment, things get messy and inconsistent fast. It also, arguably, gives maybe too much power to a single, perhaps off-the-cuff opinion, potentially ignoring the collaborative nature of comics, the artist, the editor, the whole team, and crucially, the reader's interpretation of the finished work. The story itself should be the primary source.
So bringing this all together, our deep dive really suggests that in Superman, Man of Tomorrow, #12, Superman's feat was shown as a literal, physically demanding act. Everything in the comic seems to point that way. Atlas's struggle, the clear transfer of weight, Superman's physical reaction, the dialogue about things crashing down, and the powerful symbolism, him being the foundation, the inspiration, that meaning actually comes from the reality of the physical act within the story. It's not instead of it, it's because of it.
Exactly. It's both hand, not either. The literal enables the metaphorical. And this whole thing, it raises a bigger question, I think, for you, the learner. It goes way beyond comics. When you encounter any story, a book, a movie, maybe even a historical narrative, how much weight do you give to what the creator says about it afterwards versus what the work itself actually presents? What does it mean for interpretation if, what's on the page or screen isn't necessarily the final word anymore? Where does the authority of the text lie?
Definitely something to mull over next time you dive into the story. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Until next time, keep digging, keep learning, and keep asking those deep questions.